I just hit record and we are live in 1, 2, 3. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to another episode of the BigPhaze podcast. So I have a couple of things to say about my guest here today, but before I even begin, some comments first. So my guest is one of the people that helped me reach my helped me achieve my academic prowess today. And there's a lot of backstory behind that. But firstly, he was the one that tutored me when I tried getting admission to OAU during the post-jam. And he took some great interest in my decision to have some, what's the word for it, interest in the things he was teaching at that time. So luckily for me, he happens to be a student of the same departments I was hoping to get into, and more than that, he's also a friend to me. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Bukola. Mr. Bukola, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right, I am Bukola, and it's great to be here today. And Ismail is one of the people who give me joy. And primarily, I'm here today. I honor this invitation because then when I was preparing them for post-UTME, he was one of the students who had interest in government and especially about political science. And I was so glad when he was eventually given the admission. Not only that, since he got into the department, the vision that I have for that department is that we students of the Department of Political Science of Obafemi Awolowo University will become a brand that anywhere we get to, people will be able to leave a trail behind, and people will be able to say that, oh, it's like there's something common to these people. You study political science where Obafemi Awolowo University. You also study political science where Obafemi Awolowo. Oh, I met someone yesterday who studied political science at Obafemi Awolowo University. It seems like you people, you have stuff, you have substance, and that is the brand that I would like us to. I hope that we would have a Department of Political Science, even though the system is deteriorating. But in spite of the deterioration of the system, we still have people like him who are passionate about intellectual pursuit, and not just because they want to show off. And it's about using intellectual pursuit to make meaningful contribution to what is going on out there in the world and to make our world a better place. So I think that's the major reason for being here.
That's a lot. I mean, I was hoping you would lift out the compliments at the end of the podcast. Now more than ever, I'm grateful that you are here, and I hope that we'll have a fruitful discussion on this episode. So, in case you missed it, Mr. Bukola and I are both students of OAU, Obafemi Awolowo University, and we are also students of the same department, political science. So, Mr. Bukola is very loaded, and I hope you will come to that same decision by the end of this episode, excuse me. So, I have a list of things I want to discuss with you today.
All right.
And I'm trying to determine whether I should take them in the hierarchy of how intense the discussion might be on them.
Okay.
But I'm just going to shove them regardless and see how far we get discussing each of them. So first we should discuss power.
Okay.
I have a very keen interest in human nature, and I have a feeling that the pursuit of power, whether political, civil, or social, is inherent to our nature as humans. I mean, even speaking from a psychological perspective, our nervous system is really, really old, so much so that it can tell how you rank on any social hierarchy. For example, we are within a society, and in this society, there are about maybe 100 people. Your nervous system, your brain can help you determine that, okay, out of these people, you are all the way at the bottom, and your brain automatically goes into a mode where it wants you to succeed, right? It wants to be at the helm, the top 10, the top 5, the top 1%. So humans actively, we are somehow in pursuit of power, not necessarily although that would be kind of a realist perspective of human nature. But regardless, I think even if we want to be idealistic about it, there's still something inherent about our nature that makes us want to pursue power. And also, while we are discussing power, I want to ask at the end of this podcast whether you think power is something that corrupts. As Lord Acton said, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So what's your take on power?
Yeah, power is a student of political science, and even we do not need to be a student of political science before we know that power is majorly about exerting, I don't want to say influence because power is more than influence. Exerting influence, authority, authority, influence, especially in determining outcomes. And I think personally that power stems from inequality of endowment.
Yeah.
There is no human being on earth who is not endowed with certain gifts and graces. But the fact is that we are endowed differently. Your endowment is different from mine. And your endowment and the benefits that people derive from that endowment will confer certain privileges on you, power on you, and that is power.
Okay.
Now, the exploitation of that privilege to always be ahead of others is leveraging your gifts, which we eventually lead to amassing power as a human being. Now, if you look at different societies, the way certain social class in different society, I mean upper social class, the way they emerge differs in different society. For instance, look at the blacksmiths in the old days, in historical times. Because what they were producing was so important to the further production of wealth in that society, and people were really depending on them. Yeah. Now, it's conferred certain privileges on them. So when you look at power relations in that society, because of their own contribution, their skill, their endowment, they were able to amass power. Even though people did not say that we are asking you to govern us, but because of that endowment and the skill that they had, they were able to take charge of determining what happens in the society.
I had a question right there.
Okay.
So then, that's a very elaborative way to explain power, and I appreciate that. So you mentioned societies now and power and endowment. I want to ask here whether it will be right to assume that hierarchies in society, for example, you and I, we are differently endowed. Maybe you are a better swimmer than I am, or a fighter. Maybe you are a better craftsman than I am of a singer. So these different things will determine that, since you are a better singer here, and we want to create an institution for singers to be able to work together to provide whatever it is that singers provide, it would be better then to say that because you are more endowed, because you are more competent, you should be at the head of this new institution. And for me, maybe I'm a craftsman, and there's an association of craftsmen. They want someone to come up with ideas for the best pots, best bicycle, best whatever it may be. These people might suggest that because I'm the best endowed here, I should lead the organization or the institution. In what way would you then say that when these hierarchies, human hierarchies, whatever it is, maybe it could be anything, when they are predicated on power, they become corrupt?
Okay.
When you have to say, oh, I'm the richest, I'm the tallest, I'm the this, you self-impose that on yourself, then you climb your way through any hierarchy, it becomes corrupt. It could be class captain, it could be VC of any school. It could be state governor. It could be president of a state. When that hierarchy that has to make decisions for people is predicated on power, it becomes corrupt. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, for instance, let's take this. There are societies that were in dire need of protection, security. And there were people who were valiant. They were able to provide that good which the society, virtually everyone needed. For instance, even in historical times, even in the Bible, at a point, some people were in dire need of deliverance from another state. Sorry, let me say another community.
Yeah.
And even though this man had been sent away because he was born out of wedlock, he was an illegitimate child, Jephthah, they sought for him because they believed that what they needed, he had it. And he told them that if he was able to deliver them, then he would have to superintend over their affairs. They had no option than to succumb to that. Now, they succumbed to it. He was able to deliver them, and eventually he became their judge. He became their leader.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people, it is not only endowments and skills that confer power. However, once some people are able to attain certain heights because of their endowments, because of their skills, it confers on them certain privileges. It comes with certain perquisites, privileges.
Yeah.
However, there are some people who do not have their skills and their endowment, but who desire to be at the top.
Okay.
Because of the privileges that is attached to being at the top.
So it is the privilege that usually would be attractive here, not the person's capacity.
Not the person's capacity.
Or social approval.
Or even some people could get social approval, not because they have the capacity,
but because they can buy it.
Because they could convince other people also that, see, I could do better job than this person. Or leveraging on identity. That even though this person had the skill, he's not one of you. So forget about the skill, forget about the competence. I am one of you. If you put me there, definitely I will look after your interest. So even though power comes through the skill and endowments that we have, however, some people will be attracted to such positions after their curation because of the privileges that are attached to them.
Do you think such people would be susceptible to the, let's say, so the corruption that comes with being under the influence of something as power?
Definitely. For instance, in Nigeria currently, or let me say in African countries, there's this study, you must have heard about it. Professor Richard Joseph, he published a book after the collapse of the Second Republic. The title of the book is Democracy and Prebendalism in Nigeria. Now, it's about clientelism, stuff like that.
Okay.
Now, you support a candidate and authority. Max Weber, he gave us different kind of authority. One of them is rational one. Authority that is impersonal. Impersonal in the sense that you are holding this office, but this office is an institution in its own. For instance, you are the president of Nigeria. Your private life is different from that office. That is why immediately someone dies, a president dies, another person will step into it. So it is not an inherited position, a position that you can inherit.
You are there in an act of service.
You are there to serve for certain period of time. So the office is separated from you. And that is why they expect people that when you are coming to such office, you should avoid conflict of interest. Conflict of interest in the sense that you swear an oath to protect the Constitution and to do whatever the Constitution says. So whatever that is coming that will hinder you from protecting or from
implementing your promises,
and from acting in accordance with the allegiance that you swore to, you should avoid them. Are you getting it now?
Yeah.
Now, power corrupts when conflict of interest sets in. People who have endowment, for instance, the singer you talked about, a singer who has that endowment and will feel that we need quality music in this society. So we need someone who is competent to hold this position. Now, once such a person begins to bring conflict of interest, in other words, self-interest to interfere with the discharge of his or her own functions or role as the leader of that organization, definitely corruption has set in. Yeah. So prebendalism, clientelism, all of those things that we have in Africa today, see, it happens everywhere. There's no way you will support someone to emerge as a political leader, whether president or governor, and you will not be expected to pay back. You will not expect the person to pay you back. But the kind that we have in Africa is that it is all about distribution of spoils. Political offices, they are like spoils of war that needs to be distributed
among limited people
who supported that particular leader. And in order for that leader to protect his base also, such spoils must be distributed to those who provided the support that enabled him to emerge.
Hold on here a second.
Yeah.
So, since we've established here that corruption sets in when people have conflict of interest, so then, I think I have to know, would you assume that because Africa has been in this state of interests, personal interest, not people's interest for so long, not even just personal sometimes, it could be regional, it could be ethnic interests, but not interest for all. Would you see then that our hierarchy has come to be predicated on power? Because there's a difference between a person that leads because they can, a charismatic leader, a person that is competent, a person that is experienced, a person that knows their stuff and knows it well, and someone that wants to do it, someone that feels like they can do it, they should do it, regardless of social approval. Do you think African societies have come to be predicated on power, pursuit of power, personal interests, than of people's interests? I mean, if this has gone on for so long, it will be difficult to rectify the system, because the entire structure is based on how I can get to this position of power and how I can have it be at my best interest or my immediate circle's interests. You get to a level of class captain, VC, dean, HOD, state, governor, chancellor, you name it. As long as this system of I want to do it, I can do it, I have the money, I have the power, I have the influence, has been going on for so long, it will be difficult to get people that are capable of being in that position or in those positions to actually be able to make any meaningful commitments to their immediate environment and beyond. So what do you think of this entire elaborative thing?
All right. Like I said, the major thing that attracts people or that spurs people to pursue power, for majority of people, it's about the prestige, it's about the privileges, it's about the perquisite of office. That's the major thing. Even you will see a rabble rouser will tell you, oh, we can do it. Not because of anything, or because of that prestige, oh, I will be above all. Even according to the scriptures, even the devil himself fell because of the pursuit of power.
Yeah.
That I will be above God. Every other person will be subjected to me. I will be able to give command, decree to everyone, including God. So it's not because he wanted that, in order to better something. But because of the prestige that is attached to that high place, exalted place. Now, the challenge we have in this part of the world, see, no one is absolutely altruistic. No one is absolutely altruistic.
I think it's only encouraged to be altruistic.
People, I believe human beings, we are altruistic. I believe that would be the measure of that. Your level of altruism is different from my level of altruism. The level of another person's altruism is different, will be different from mine.
Can we define altruism just so that's what we understand?
It's about selflessness,
pro-social behavior.
Yeah, you are seeking this particular position not because of any string that is attached, not because you want to better yourself, you want to better people in your circle, you want to better your ethnic groups alone, or you are seeking vengeance for your own identity group, or you are seeking the sectional interest. So that is altruism. It is predicated on selflessness. And we have people who are really selfless. So when we say people are not altruistic, it's like saying that there are no selfless people in the world. And that is a lie. There are people who are selfless to a fault, to their own detriment.
But we are not all selfless.
We are not all selfless. We do not have the same level of selflessness.
There's this interesting psychological fact that out of every 100% population, 2% tend to be psychopaths. Yeah, there's always that. People that are, just like we have things like we have the big five model of personality. We also have other model for dark triad traits like machiavellianism. We have psychopathy, sociopathy, antisocialism. So we have these things, and I think it exists in all of us. Some people's one is just magnified to some larger extent, and I think we can see that in people like Niccolo Machiavelli in his book The Prince. He dictated how pursuit of power should be your priority.
Forget about moral.
Morality should forget about morality.
Morality is true. But the challenge is, this thing can be nurtured.
No, for sure. Every trait can be nurtured.
It can be nurtured. So, nurturing can downplay, can reduce the excesses of different traits in us, and that's the case of that's the place of nurture. But what I want to bring out is people seek power because of what power confers, not because of what the good the power can do.
So it's the byproduct of whatever position they aim for.
Because of what power confers. Now, power confers authority, confers prestige, presence, all of the. You can be in the place as a governor and you will be hidden.
Oh yes,
you must be accorded.
Always in the spotlight.
Yeah, you must be accorded that must be given to you. However, the challenge that we have in Africa is, I was about saying something earlier.
Okay.
That there's this Adam Smith invisible hand. And I think democracy operates like that also. And invisible hand is all about the pursuit of self-interest. We indirectly lead toward the pursuit of the good of the people in the society. Are you getting it?
Yeah.
And I think it is said that it is not because of the benevolence of the butcher, of the brewer, and of the baker that we have our bread, our dinner. So none of them is doing it because of benevolence, because they are benevolent, because they want to do good to every one of us. But because of their own interest, they are indirectly promoting societal good. Now, in democracy, you cannot become a president without you contesting for office. You cannot become a president, a governor, an House of Rep member, a senator, an House of Assembly member, without you having an aspiration, without you having an ambition. And there's this, this connotation for ambition. We always see it sometimes as something that is bad. This person is ambitious. When we say this person is ambitious, it simply means that person is pursuing something that is not good enough.
It's negative, like
negative. It has negative connotation. And ambition needs not to have negative connotation. For instance, a man, John F. Kennedy, in the early 60s, he said by the end of that decade, American will put a man on the moon. It was an ambitious goal.
And they did it in 1969.
1969. It was accomplished, even though he was no longer around. They eventually accomplished it. So that was a man's ambition. That ambition pushed him to contest for the office of the President of the United States. He won, and he was able to set a bold agenda for the nation. Exploring the space, all of those things that we have today, making technology possible, making internet possible, these are indirect benefits of exploring the space, of putting a man on the moon. I don't know if you're getting it now.
I don't.
You don't, right?
I do. I think.
Okay. Now, so advancing agenda that will benefit the society, we need to seek power. Are you getting it now? And you cannot seek power without you having the ambition, the aspiration to do so. So even though you now have it, you are channeling it towards the pursuit of agendas that will lead to betterment of the society.
I have a question to ask here.
Okay.
We are still going to go back to democracy in a minute, but I think I came to some kind of understanding regarding this entire platform. So initially, I wanted this platform to be something that will help me become stable financially on the long run.
Okay.
But then I realized that in my study of philosophy, I discovered that when honor is attached to something, there's a chance that you get popular support in whatever you're doing. So that discovery helped me tilt myself away from having this be my own thing, but should be something others can directly benefit from. And honor is something that you gain by voluntary, selfless action. And then I tilted more towards, you know what, I want this platform to be something that will benefit me and others. I haven't made a vow that the very first 100K I make from this platform will be devoted to installing beings on the campus. So I think the moment you separate your own personal pursuits, maybe not even necessarily separating it, but when you dampen down your own pursuits and put others' interest above your own, you tend to get popular support, and that's where social approval comes in. If you are trying to attain power, if you are trying to attain anything. So let's talk about democracy here. Do you think it works?
Democracy works, and before we go to democracy,
okay,
I think the best way to pursue power as humans is what some people call nobilis oblige. Nobilis oblige is okay. Before I go to that, I read a book, and in that book they talked about two types of bandits in Africa.
Okay,
using it to characterize political leaders.
Mm-hmm.
We have stationary bandits. We have roving bandit.
Roving
bandit.
Okay.
ROVING.
Roving.
Stationary bandit. Roving bandits wait for you to cultivate the land, plant your crops. They wait until the period of harvest. So they will come during the period of harvest, cut away everything you had labored for that year, giving you nothing, leaving nothing behind, except the few you can glean after they had left.
Yeah.
And they use cutters. They destroy everything. They will cut away everything, go like that until the next period of harvest. But stationary bandits, they stay with you. They will allow you to plant, cultivate. They will even provide support. But when the period of harvest comes, they will take larger share, but they will give you something in return.
Okay.
So that you could perpetuate, you could continue to produce, and they will continue to get. Stationary bandits, sometimes they might share the proceeds 50-50. You take 50, you take 50.
Yeah.
So that next planting season, you'll be able to,
with them also.
They will be able to have something to plant again, reap again. So that's stationary bandit. So what we have majorly in Africa is we have roving bandits. They do not consider what will happen after they have achieved their own self-interest. And that is not noblesse oblige. Noblesse oblige is, let me promote your interests. And by promoting your interest, I am protecting my own interests. You get that?
Yes.
That was what Singapore did under Lee Kuan Yew. They were selfless, no doubt. But they were able to provide what the people needed. For instance, at the point of independence, Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew and his colleagues, they knew that what people needed were jobs. And in order to survive, Singapore at the point was part of Malaysia.
Yeah, they got kicked out in 1964.
Yeah. Now, it was in a bid to ensure that their people survive without begging other nations. At a point in the 60s, 70s also, Britain was pulling out of Singapore. I mean, their armed forces pulling out of Singapore. It was a dire condition. Singapore was in a dire condition. So they were looking for means to get employment for their people so as to put money in their pocket for them to run their lives.
They actually begged the British to state in 1975.
Yeah. And also some of the instruments, some of the equipment that they felt the British government was no longer needed. They asked them not to destroy them, sell it to them, even real estate. Now, what I want to bring out is Singapore was able to do that. And at the point, Lee Kuan Yew said, socialism helps. We do not need to be puritanical about ideology. I mean, be rigid about their commitment to stick to one ideology. They were looking for something that will work. So whatever will work was enough for them, not rigid commitment to a particular ideology. And that was why, because if you look at Singapore at the beginning, they were socialist inclined. But in order to get something that will work for the people, they needed to shift ground a bit. They needed to change tack, and which led them to where they are today. Now, what I want to bring out is the People's Action Party, the leading party, the dominant party in Singapore today, is ever leading party, and that party will continue to lead as long as the principle of noblesse oblige is at work. That we have to protect our leadership by discharging our functions in a way that will continue to make these people to be better off. And as long as we are doing that, people might be saying, outsiders might be saying that we are authoritarian, that Lee Kuan Yew was authoritarian.
Yes.
Well, I did mean that it was a negative authoritarianism that is not mild the way it is currently in Singapore. The leadership of PAP would have broken by now. I don't know if you get me.
I do.
Now, however, Singapore, which is being led by PAP, People's Action Party is able to lead Singapore since that time till now because of the principle of noblesse oblige.
So where we have...
You have interest in leadership, but your interest in leadership can only be protected by discharging your function in a way that makes these people to be better off.
Okay.
That even though there will be alternative, the alternative will not be credible to the point that they will leave you for that alternative. So you are protecting your leadership by ensuring that the interest of the people also is being protected.
Okay, I want to simplify everything you just said here. Right. So, to Mr. Bukola's understanding, democracy works, but just like its association with power, honor, integrity, commitment, and everything else, it works the best when the people in positions of authority and power act in accordance to the desire of the people and simultaneously protect their own. I win, you win.
Not a zero-sum game.
Not a zero-sum game. Because in a zero-sum game where
winner takes all,
where we have roving bandits as leaders, they tend to serve their own interests. And I think we see here largely in African societies, especially Nigeria, where the leaders we've had tend to serve their party, tend to serve themselves, tend to serve their families. And this kind of leadership deteriorates the African society significantly, because resources that should be used to advance the people, the infrastructure of society, are being diverted to other places to become stolen goods. And you are taking from these people, giving to other people. You are helping them grow. You are helping these people be regressive, and that doesn't help anyone. So in African societies right now, where democracy clearly doesn't work. By the way, Africa has had the most coup in the world. I think the global number of coups is 480, and Africa has had over 240, and I think over 100 of them have been successful. So clearly, not all African societies practice democracy, but the ones that do right now, if clearly democracy doesn't work for them, what other system of government would you suggest that we should employ?
You know, the challenge in Africa that we have in Africa is our diversity is an issue. African states are heterogeneous. For instance, Nigeria has, I don't know if I'm correct, more than 300 linguistic groups.
250 years.
Okay. Now, you know, the challenge is authoritarianism cannot work. Because, for instance, look at Abacha. He wanted to perpetuate himself in office. Whether by Okokro, he wanted to do so. And it came from a certain part of the country. For instance, don't let me even go there. People still believe in the hegemony of the northern part of Nigeria, especially the Hausa Fulani extraction.
We call them the Kardashian extraction.
Now, they believe in their hegemony, that they are too power inclined. And that is still fueling suspicion of domination in Nigeria. So why democracy is the best that we can have? Democracy is not perfect, but it's the best that we can have in Africa. And why I said that is because of our heterogeneity. We can't have an hereditary system. We can't have a system that once the leader dies, his son will succeed him. What is currently happening in Chad? You know, when the former leader died, his son took charge. His son is now in charge of Chad. Now that can happen in Nigeria. You will burn down the whole place. Don't let's even go too far. You know, when 1993 election was annulled, there was this suspicion that the North wanted to perpetuate itself in power. That the North did not want a Yoruba man to ascend to occupy that office of the first person in Nigeria. Even the Igbo people, they're having that suspicion today. So you imagine that when Buhari's term was about to expire, he brought another person from the northern part of Nigeria. Let's even say his own, or someone from Katsina, or someone from Daura. You know, had they been attempted to do that, we wouldn't be where we are today in Nigeria. I think you agree with me. Nigeria would be a volatile place currently. So democracy is still the best that we can practice in Africa because of our heterogeneity. And if democracy, that system can be credible enough, you know, each group will know that they have a chance to compete and to be able to win that exalted office or one of their own. And even if they will not be able to get one of their own to occupy that exalted office, at least they would benefit from whoever wins the election that will enable such a person to occupy such office.
Wow, okay. That was an explosive explanation of why democracy is what we have to deal with in Africa. And I want to close our discussion here on democracy with a quote from Winston Churchill.
Okay.
He says, democracy is the worst form of government, except all the other ones that have been tried. So it's all we have.
Yeah.
I mean, the advantages exist, so the disadvantages. But when we outweigh one with the other, we still come to the decision, the conclusion that it is the best we have. So that's that on democracy. Since we're already talking about African societies now, I want to tilt more toward them properly in this discussion. Colonialism, do you think it was inevitable? More specifically, African colonialism.
I'm not sure it was inevitable.
Okay.
I think it's better to put it this way, that it was neither inevitable nor evitable.
Could you explain the difference here? Because the way I see it, humans typically have the tendency to explore. We know what happened with the Americas when it was discovered by Christopher Columbus in 1492.
Yeah.
It was split between the Portuguese and the Spanish before other European countries got a whiff of this new world, before they ventured into settling there, colonizing them. And I think even Asia to an extent was colonized by the European, although not largely. They just turned into spheres of influence.
Man.
You know what happened with the Opium War?
Man.
China and Britain.
Man.
And the Japanese on their island had the Dutch traders, but they never allowed them to go inside until the Americans in 1853 asked Japan to open up its borders, and they somehow colonized it, although not directly. They were only able to export their Western influence into that island. So speaking of Africa right now, Africa as a continent was discovered because the Portuguese were trying to find, I think it's the Portuguese were trying to find a shorter route to reach India, so they have to go all around and such. Now, they find this new world, and they couldn't perpetrate it initially because of the fertility, mortality rate was very, very high. They were going to die instantly, they step in. Now, they have this medicine that helps them, keeps them alive. What do they do about this new land they've discovered? Do they leave it be? Do they come to explore? Do they come to share like they did with the Americas, or what is it they will do? So I would say that it was inevitable. And seeing how power works, people tend to dominate those they consider quote-unquote inferior. So would you still argue that inevitable is not the word to use?
But all of us, we are students of history.
Yeah.
And when Africa had contact with Europe, that contact did not make colonialism inevitable outrightly.
Okay.
It was transactional.
Yeah, commercial,
transactional. However, the transatlantic slave trade that happened, it was like a decimation of the capacity of African societies, because there was no way that would not weaken them. For instance, we could see Western countries today, they are becoming aging, their population is becoming aging. And because of that, we know the implication. We know the implication, the burden on the public finance, trying to support them, things like that. Now, same way it's happened for African countries. And why a country like Japan was able to resist direct colonization, part of it was the strongness of that system. You get the strongness of their indigenous system. Now, I think being we also, not that we didn't have indigenous system that were strong, but those indigenous systems were not strong to the point of resisting the attempt of the Western world to colonize us.
Is it just the system though? Or I mean, there are other reasons for
other reasons, but the system is part of the reason that made colonialism to happen. And even though colonialism happened, for instance, in Nigeria, they still leveraged the indigenous institution that we had then. Now, economic reason is part of it. Economic reason is part of it. You know, people have always argued that slave trade, we put the burden, the capability of slave trade on the Western countries, on the white people. But this thing was transactional. It was transactional in the sense that it was not even these white people who moved into the interior of African societies to capture slaves. They were slave traders who were indigenous people. Are you getting it?
Yes.
Now, these people, they were slave catchers. They caught slaves, brought them to the coast, sold them to the white people. Now, another thing we need to take into consideration is that what was the value of labor in African countries as at that time? What you value, you will not sell. And I think we're getting it. That's true. Had it been that the value of labor in Africa, in West Africa, in those areas, part of Africa that sold slaves, that were engaged in slave trade, had it been the indigenous value of labor was higher than selling them as slaves to the white people, the slave trade wouldn't have taken place at this at the level at which it took place.
And part of the system that aided colonialism is this structure of slavery.
Yeah, look at what happened in this King Kosoko, the one who was eventually dethroned. Yeah, look at what happened in Benin. I mean, dahomey, how their kings supported slaves. Now, the challenge is that if what they were using slaves, people for, human labor for, then in Africa, for instance, let's assume that they were using them for agriculture, and it was generating a lot of proceeds, knowing that once you lose your labor, you know that it will lead to reduction of your wealth. They wouldn't have sold those people as slaves. So it wasn't that slave trade occurred. We shouldn't put the culpability of that on the white people alone. There are other factors that we must consider before we can say that the culpability should be placed on the lap of the white people alone.
What other factors would you consider here that aided colonialism aside the existence of the structure of slavery?
Economic factor is part of it. For instance, you know, conducting international trade comes with transaction costs. It comes with transaction costs. And, you know, people would do anything in the pursuit of profit. You know, how this company, Ria Niger company, dealt with King Jacha of Opobo. You know, majority of the records of how Ria Niger company worked, those records were destroyed. I think you need to read this man's book, What Britain Did to Nigeria, Max Yolong.
Okay.
He documented that. And also, there's this book on economic reason for colonialism, economic history of West Africa. Let me try to remember the name of the author. I've forgotten the name of the author, but that's the title of the economic history of West Africa. Okay? Now, even some of the goods that we're producing, I mean agricultural goods, cocoa, like that. African uh, African people, they took initiative to be producing this thing even when colonialism was yet to occur. The former partitioning occurred in 1884, 1885, right? And former colonialism, especially in British territory, did not take place until around 1900. Now, economic reason was part of it. And why economic reason? They felt that intermediaries, African intermediaries, those who interfaced between, for instance, those who were producing palm oil in Nigeria, in the Niger Delta, like King Jaja of Opobo in the Niger Delta. King Jaja of Opobo was interfacing between the producer and those whites who were coming to buy palm oil and the cane also. So they felt that it was an obstruction. Do you get that now? It was an obstruction. And if you could remember, Royal Niger Company was given the authority, the charter, to be in charge of the territory that is now known as Nigeria, especially the southern part, the southeastern part, the south-south part. And the reason for that is, for you to conduct trade, you need currency. For you to conduct trade, you need policing. I don't know if you're getting it now. For you to conduct trade, you need quasi state structures, what states can do. So in the absence of state, trade will be difficult to conduct. For instance, you could buy goods from the indigenous people. Another set of indigenous people would corner you at some point and cut away the goods you've paid for. I don't know if you're getting it. Now, all of those things, there must be measures in place that would reduce tendencies for loss. Now, in order to reduce tendencies for loss, things that could happen that would bring about loss of goods and profit by those whites who were coming, there was a need for state structure to be put in place.
So
colonialism came in also because of economic reason. Do you get that now? Our system permitted it. Economic factor aided it.
Okay.
Economic factor aided it. And the accumulation of deficiency in development, accumulation of underdevelopment over time, especially since Africa had contact with Europe, also accumulation, the cumulative effects of that aided colonialism also.
So the way I see it, if I try to wrap up everything you said, is the extent of structures in Africa made it possible for Europeans to perpetrate into African societies, and the existence of their government structures, especially places like the emirate system they also had, the top-down kind of role made it easy for the colonial masters to be able to administer that African society. And also there were factors, economic factors especially, which led to colonialism. So I guess a final question to wrap up the discussion on colonialism, would you say, in a short amount of time, whether colonialism had more negative impacts on Africa than indeed positive?
I think Africa benefits from colonialism. At the same time, there were negative impacts.
Which one outweighs the other? In the rest of the words,
the negative impact should outweigh the positive impact. However, we need to change our orientation that the negative impact of colonialism is still what is affecting us today. We cannot discount the fact that it contributed to where we are today, especially in terms of orientation, because we were treated like subjects. We were treated as inferior people. And, it's difficult. A child, if you've seen a child who had inferiority complex because of the way he was nurtured, it's always difficult to get over inferiority complex easily like that. It's always difficult. It's not something that you can get over overnight.
Yeah.
You can get away overnight. it will require another concerted nurturing, proper nurturing of that child before such a person will be able to come out of the waste, that weight of inferiority complex that have been instilled in him while growing up. So we cannot discount the importance, the contribution of the bad negative effect of colonialism on what we are experiencing currently. For instance, even the power dynamics in Nigeria, we can trace it to amalgamation and the result of colonialism, the outcome of colonialism. For instance, in the north, when Nigeria was created, 3 regions, the north alone, the northern region alone, in terms of size and population, was larger and greater than the 2 other regions combined together. And every attempt of either the western part, the old western region, which comprises of the Yoruba people, majority Yoruba people as the majority, and also the eastern part, which comprises of the Igbo people as the majority ethnic group there. If you look at post-elections in Nigeria, it has always been difficult, for instance, for Igbo people to control the federal government. You have to do it in partnership with one of the regions. It's a vestige, it's part of the vestiges of colonialism, what even the East is experiencing today, because practically the federal government of Nigeria was handed over to the Hausa Fulani people. Are you getting it now? So even till now, there is no way a Yoruba man will become the president of Nigeria without partnering with the North.
All right.
There is no way that will happen.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, yet again, an elaborate answer to a question that I think most of my audience will have at the back of their minds.
I'm sorry, let me contribute this before we conclude this, before we move on. Like I said, our experience of colonialism should not determine where we are today. We are where we are today by choice, in the sense that the choice of those who have superintended over our affairs since we became independent.
Yeah.
Because look at country like even Japan. Japan has experienced worst. Look at what they experienced during the Second World War. You wouldn't expect such a country to quickly rise again, but probably because of their homogeneity. But what I want to bring out is there is no country, especially even East Asian countries that are experiencing development today, that has not had its own fair share, even more than fair share, of the negative effect of colonialism. So we do not have excuse. We should jettison this idea of saying that we are where we are because of colonialism. Other countries have experienced worse than we experienced. But that shouldn't give us excuse to be where we are today. Okay. For instance, I'm sorry for elongating this again. For instance, my parents experienced misfortune. I mean, financial misfortune. Is the intention of my dad was to give us the best of education. Even when public primary schools were yet to become what they are today, when the system was yet to be deteriorating the way they have deteriorated today, my father sent us to private primary school, and his intention was to send us to private secondary school. At the point, he could not get that, and that really affects my educational development. How I graduated, I left secondary school with just 4 credits without mathematics and English. I was so poor academically, but what I want to bring out is, had it been I continue to point accusing finger to my past and the inability of my parents to give me what they're supposed to give me, definitely I will not be where I am today. I will continue to be the victim of my past instead of rising up to the occasion, to the reality that in spite of my past, I can achieve something greater, which in the future, which even my past has not equipped me to.
Mr. Bukola was in the middle of a closing note, I suppose. But someone came in and we had to take a pause. But I'm going to do the honors regardless from where you left off. I believe he was trying to show us through his personal experience of victim mentality that it should never be an excuse for you to not overcome what you've set your mind to do, or to really move from where you are to a place more desirable. You can do it. And considering yourself a victim will leave you in that perpetual state of I need help. And African societies are always in that state of, oh, we need help, we need grants, we need this, we can't do anything on our own. And we have the most population in Africa, Nigeria that is. And look at where we are today. We have the highest GDP in Africa today. And we are as regressive as anything else. We are still the capital poverty state of the world. We have very low HDI, Human Developmental Index. And I could go on and on about how victim mentality doesn't really help anyone reach anywhere. But I'm going to end that there for a discussion with a philosophy student or even a psychology student for that matter. So, Mr. Bukola, before we wrap up this episode, I have a deck of cards here. I'm going to shuffle them. Then I'm going to pick 5. The 5 of them, the 5 of these things I pick, will have questions on them, and I want you to answer these questions. So I'm shuffling now, and so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Let's leave it more long. Okay. So the very first question here is, if your department had a theme song whenever you entered a classroom, what will this theme song be and why?
Okay.
You know, the soundtrack.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not someone who is really
You're more
inclined.
Okay,
like
okay. That explains why you had to take a long time to pick.
that's
a question.
challenge. Yeah.
Okay, so shall we go to the next question then?
Yeah, let's listen.
Okay, so the next question is, do you buy the arguments that federal universities are better than private ones?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't at all. It depends on how a private university is being run and how a federal university is being run. Gone are the days that people despise private universities. Gone are those days. Because, the whole essence of universal education, the current orientation of students in federal universities is even something that is not encouraging at all. And no one is, due to the usual funding and also commitment of staff in federal universities, because there's this belief in this part of the world that when you're working for a government, you do little, you don't need to do your best.
Yeah.
Just do the little that you can and get out. But private universities, it's not a sole proprietorship business. Some people own the university alone. But whether in partnership or whichever way the ownership, whichever form the ownership is, private universities, they want their institution to succeed and to prepare students for the challenges ahead. I would like to cite an example of a university, although not in Nigeria, Ashesi University. Ashesi University is a private university in Ghana. It's one of the fastest growing university that we have in West Africa and even in Africa. It was founded by a man. He was working with Microsoft, a Ghanaian, and the university was structured. It was patterned. They took the pattern from liberal arts colleges in the US. And, when I read about it, 6 months after graduation, their students, they've gotten jobs. with big institutions, multinational corporations. Some of them are working with General Electric, big institutions. Some of them, they are establishing their own businesses. So I think that's the goal of education. But the orientation that we have here in private universities, federal universities, it is government-owned, and the standard is even deteriorating if we should compare and contrast currently.
So it's not better than
standard is no better than the only advantage that federal universities have is in terms of being able to professors, those who are, lecturers who are in the system currently. But if things continue the way they are, and the pay and the flexibility in private universities improve, but I can see that the quality workforce that we have in the government universities today, they will be attracted to private universities. They will.
Okay. Well, I guess we can just leave that at that then. You won't buy into the idea that federal universities are better than private. So here's the question.
It depends on the metrics.
Okay. All right. Here's the question. A next question. What are some challenges that you believe Nigerian students face? Maybe about 2 or 3.
The first challenge is the quality of education Nigerian students are receiving. It's an education that is not preparing them for the task ahead, for the future ahead. And that's the first major challenge.
What's the second one?
That's the first. That's the major challenge. The second one is, I think it's personal to students themselves.
The second one you're about to say.
The second one,
okay.
It's about their orientation, the orientation they have about university education. University's education should not be about rote learning. It shouldn't be about memorization of facts. It shouldn't be about you memorize facts and in the examination, an education that is tailored towards towards the fine. It should be problem solving. So we have a system in place, and students also have this orientation about university education being like secondary school education. I call it fill my cup load. Your teacher will just come, fill your cup, tell you everything that you need to know, and after that, go away and you will write tests. After that, you write exam, you get an A. You can get an A in a course and you do not have the grasp of that particular course. So much of our education here is tilted towards, is theory inclined. Much of practice is not included in our education. And if you want to learn something well, you have to practice it.
Okay.
So our education is not tilted towards problem solving.
All right.
And that's the challenge. Students themselves, they do not want an education that is problem solving inclined. We want something that is easy. Let me just do this, get my certificate and get out.
All right.
That will not take us anywhere.
All right, let's leave that at that. Do you have a third one before we proceed to the next question? Do you have a third one before we proceed to the next question? A third challenge you think students face?
Okay. The problem of funding also.
Funding the students or funding the school?
Funding both. Funding in the sense that we should not deceive ourselves. Quality education requires money. Quality education requires money. And if people, our system is what it is today, because few parents can pay for the tuition of their children out of pocket. If you want to have properly, there are universities, private universities that are paying 1 million naira per session. Even more than that, if you want to include feeding, accommodation, and
okay,
we have. Well, I'm not saying Nigerians are poor. Nigerian parents are poor to the extent that they cannot afford. But how many parents can afford to pay such humongous amount of money?
According to the statistics that the Bureau released last year, I think over 60% of Nigerians live in multidimensional poverty. So it's truly the case that they won't be able to afford quality education. We could talk about the funding of school, but I think that would take out.
You have students also, in order to make ends meet, they have to combine some other things, which affects the academic, which turn their education to just read to pass. The grasp of what they came to the university.
Right. So, the next question here for you is: what is the most unusual tradition your school has?
The most unusual tradition my school has.
If there's not, you can skip it.
I think the most unusual tradition should be this. It's very related to students' union.
Okay.
This tradition of students being the judge of another student.
The judge of other students.
Yeah. I mean, when a student does something that is, for instance, stealing, let's take theft as an example. Students will be in charge, will be the one to measure out punishment, will be the one to decide the case of the person. And it's very unusual and it's weird, it's very awkward. It should not even be had in a same climb, in a same place. That's the one that happened recently. A student allegedly stole, and students, they took law into their hands, beat this person. Eventually, it led to the death.
That's a rather strange tradition. And I think
it's a tradition that we need to do away with.
All right. Yeah. All right. So, final question before we end this episode: what is the most famous fashion trend on campus? On your campus?
Can I answer that question? I'm not sure because I'm not.
Well, I know you personally.
Fashioning.
I think I know you personally, and I think you enjoy wearing native a lot.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Because I'm a Yoruba boy.
All right, that's fair. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. If you enjoyed this, do let me know in the comment section. If you also have more questions regarding this, I will be more than happy to answer them whenever I can. I'm also going to link in the description relevant things I've written regarding anything that I might have talked about during the course of this discussion. But before I wrap this up, Mr. Bukola, do you have any advice you would give to me as someone that is just starting this kind of initiative?
Yeah, I think the best advice, don't let me say the best. You mentioned it during our conversation. Don't let money be at the center of what you are doing. Let it be about curation of value. When you curate value,
opportunities find you.
Opportunities will find you, and money will definitely come. Because people have channels today on YouTube primarily because they want to earn. People who seek money like that, they don't eventually get it. And if you want to curate something that is sustainable, because if money is at the center of it, you can afford to hear anything you can afford to share anything through that channel. What is not edifying, what will not really contribute to people's lives positively, what will not challenge them to grow. So don't let money be at the center of it. Let it be about the curation of value. Let it be about the improvement. Let it be about improving people's lives, improving their perspective. We are in an age of disinformation. We have many wrong information out there. So let's have this channel as one that dispenses accurate knowledge to people, that gives them what they have not known before, which they need to know. Something that makes them a better citizen, something that makes them a better member of their community, that makes them to contribute meaningfully. So I think it should be centered around that.
Okay.
I know you've heard of, you must know about Oprah Winfrey.
Yes, I do.
A talk show. Look at what it eventually became. And it's about curation of value. At a point, I listened to her. She was deliberate about it. She interviewed a woman who had an awkward life. And after interviewing the woman, she told, Oprah Winfrey told herself and her producer that they were not going to hear that interview. Because of what? Because if the son of that woman heard about what that woman was doing, she was a Sunday school teacher, and at the same time, she was a sex addict. So she was teaching in the church, and at the same time, she continued in her waywardness. So if her son heard about it, it would definitely bring something undesirable, an undesirable consequence. So in order not to damage that woman's life, damage her son's life, and people, her loved ones, she decided not to hear that. So you have to be intentional about what you release out to people to hear. So that is very important.
Okay.
So let's curate value. And with the creation of value, we can only see the beginning of this. We will not see the end of it, because the end, the greatness of what is just beginning now will be something that we cannot imagine.
Wow. Okay.
So
That's a way to close an episode. Thank you very much for being here, and I will take your words to heart. If you're also willing to support me in my journey to create this value that Mr. Bukola has spoken of, please remember to subscribe, share this episode, and come back for the next one. All right, that's see you next week. Bye.